A very good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. If you'll excuse me, my pre-show routine is a carbon copy of Zane Gonzalez's pre-kick routine, so I got to fix the hair a little bit. The Washington Commanders win. So many great games, or not so many great games, so many interesting outcomes from NFL Wild Card Weekend, but let's see the outcome of our recap screens. This is a full picture. We had a lot of picks, and honestly, I had a bad Friday going 0 for 3 overall with some carryover picks from last week. I go 2 and 4. That's not great. Mike McClure nails his, Buckets nails his. But overall, Danny Brasco 2 for 4, or I should say 3 for 5, 2 for 4. We go 8, 10, and 1. That's a losing day. A couple of plus money plays in there, so we'll take that, but it's a losing day nonetheless. We got to do better than that, and we're going to do it with the stars of the show. Let's go ahead and bring them in. We've got Mackenzie Brooks. We've got Mike McClure for tennis, anyone? And we've got Larry Hartstein. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into picks, we got tennis, we got NBA, we got NFL, Monday Night Football. We got a hockey sports line pick. Larry, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to give you kind of a just free reign. NFL wildcard weekend, your reaction.
Well, kudos to your Commanders. They were the better team, and I'll let you and Mike dive into that one and how great Jaden Daniels is. We might get, 10 or 12 fourth down attempts in that game against the Lions. That's going to be a great one. The line is 8, but even moving a little bit higher as we speak. The game that really caught my eye is all the moaning and groaning about the Eagles and how bad they were. Well, they won the game. They covered against a very good team, and Jalen Hurts hadn't played in basically a month, so he was rusty, and that's going to come. That did not discourage me because I do have the Eagles coming out of the NFC, so I think that was actually a positive the way they played. I hate losing to Kobe Dean, and I do want to pick up Inner Excellence right now because that is the hottest book around after A.J. Brown somehow on this game, when he had one catch, was the game that they caught him reading that, even though he says he reads it all the time during games.
Yeah, Mackenzie, for some reason, it's okay for A.J. Brown to read a book on the sideline, but there are so many NFL players that if they were caught doing that, like just the rhetoric would have been so crazy. But I guess A.J. Brown largely gets a pass. Talk to me about your reaction from NFL Wildcard Weekend, Mackenzie.
A lot of similar feelings to Larry. You could say that the Packers beat the Packers. You could say the defense played phenomenal. Stings to see Nakobe Dean out again. Hate to see our own Georgia Bulldog, Philadelphia Eagle go down. But overall, you can only, that's so Philly fan of me to just pick this team apart for winning a playoff game. I'm trying to be a better person than that. So I'm more on Larry's side here.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Mike. Joe Neuenfeld saying, all of you called the Packers a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad take, frankly. And if they hadn't given a possession away, like on the front end, I think that could have been an extremely competitive game. With that said, they're out. And Mike, you and I both kind of said the winner of that game likely, I shouldn't say likely, but has a very good chance to win the NFC. Do you still think that in your reaction to NFL Wildcard Weekend?
I do. Honestly, there were a few spots in that game where I thought the Eagles looked a little better when they got away from just the obvious run game and they started hitting Dallas Goedert a little bit more and got a little more creative. So I think that they're smart enough and will kind of build on that. So I do like the Eagles going forward. I want to talk about Jaden Daniels, though. Just having a mobile quarterback changes things so much when you've got to commit one guy to spy. And in times, whether it was miscommunication or not, they actually had 2 spies on him, which made things super easy relatively over the middle of the field. So I was very impressed there. I think that having Austin Eckler and Robinson as well. Robinson caught some passes out of the backfield. If the Commanders can hold up defensively, they're certainly going to need some luck there in that department. But I think their offense is good enough that they could hang in a dome against the Lions.
Yeah, if they can hold on to the ball and win the time of possession like they did yesterday, I mean, I think not only can they cover against the Lions, they certainly can win. Mike, because you had a prop on Austin Eckler, real quick on this one, and it hit. But I was very frustrated to see Brian Robinson at 1.6 yards per clip, just like run like on big, important first and second downs late in the game. I just feel like Eckler should be on the field a lot more often, even in early down situations. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think Eckler should be on the field in more of those situations. And frankly, in the matchup against Tampa, just why are we running the ball at all? Just keep the ball in Jaden Daniels' hands, give him an RPO and let him go to work would be my preference. But yeah, Austin Eckler should be out there more. it wouldn't shock me if they could get to situations where they play them both at the same time as well. I know that it obviously involves a lot to implement something like that, but Austin Eckler's very good in the pass game, just in pass protection,
Mhm.
which I think having him out there a little more would be a great thing for them.
All right, we've got a lot of comments about Washington in particular. Ian Lights Out says Lions will crush them. I mean, listen, that's not an unpopular take, I'm sure, as we lead up. Eric David, another unpopular take, or I should say popular take. Jaden is elite and will be brutal for the NFC East for the next 10 plus years. Ian Lights Out says Jaden really is him. I mean, he really is. All right, let's finally get to some picks. We got a lot of picks to talk about. We're actually going to start with the Australian Open, Mike, one of your sub specialties. I only say sub because a lot of people hear you always talk NFL and college football and things of that nature. Talk to me about tennis.
Yes, I love tennis, particularly when you get to major tournaments like this. We are going to be on the women's side, though, tonight. Emma Navarro, someone I want to talk about here. I played this minus 130. It has leaked out a little bit. It's minus 150 in some spots, minus 140 now. Would still play it at minus 140 and minus 150. I made the number minus 170 here. I think she's got a pretty big edge. First of all, 4-0 head-to-head against Peyton Stearns. Peyton Stearns, the reason the line is where it is, she is extremely talented, one of the best natural raw talents. The issue for me is just the mental side of the game, playing Navarro here in such a big match in a major tournament. I don't think Stearns has the serve to get it done here. Now, Navarro at just 23, when you're that young in majors, you're going to run into a lot of variance. Again, why it's priced the way it is. However, she's made enough deep runs for me at some of these big events that I think, because the serve isn't so strong on the side of Peyton Stearns here, that Navarro should cruise in this matchup. Another way to play this, if you're having to pay minus 150 or more, I do like the game spread at minus 1.5. I would even still lean there pretty heavily at 2.5. You'd be getting plus money. You'd have to play an alternate line on that. But Emma Navarro is someone that I think is going to be the big game hunter and going to play really, really well at these majors, like we've already seen in her career. But for me, it's really just about the serve from Peyton Stearns. I don't think the serve is going to hold up. Give me Emma Navarro here. And what to me, and other people might say is priced like a trap line because she certainly has the name value. I'm willing to pay to find out, though, minus 130 up to minus 150.
Well, so is Danny Brasco, who was in the chat, and he says, I'm blind tailing. Let's go M squared. I mean, listen, if you're going to blind tail anyone, I feel like Mike might be that guy. We've got a lot of NBA plays in the chat. I want to point some out. Jacob Couture says Hardaway Jr., 12 plus points at minus 105. Let's see. We've got J-Real with Jalen Green over 22.5 points at minus 104. Mackenzie, later in the show, you have an NBA call out, but I do want to give out an NHL pick, courtesy of Bruce Marshall from SportsLine. We're going with the Oilers. This is a big plus money play. Oilers, puck line, minus 1.5 at plus 150. Again, Oilers minus 1.5 at plus 150 from Bruce Marshall. That is one of many SportsLine picks you can get if you are a member of SportsLine, which I hope every single person in the chat is. And by the way, hit the like button if you could. Maybe not just for that pick, but Larry, there's a pick I was going to give out last night, and I didn't get around to it. I have a pick in this NFL game tonight that I do like. I may jump on this one that you're on to because the matchup looks very, very good. And this guy, I think, could have a breakout game. Talk to me about your pick.
Yeah, TJ Hawkinson was not there for the first meeting against the Rams, and I was on his prop last week, and let's just say it didn't hit in some very excruciating fashion when Sam Darnold has TJ Hawkinson wide open for 20-yard gains over the middle and overthrows it. He was just airmailing everything last week, 10 overthrown balls in that tough environment in Detroit. But now you go to a neutral site against a team that has a decent pass rush, a good pass rush, but it's not going to be anything like what he was facing at Detroit. So I think Sam Darnold is going to calm down and he's going to hit TJ Hawkinson. He targeted him 8 times last week. They only connected twice. The key thing is that the Rams give up the largest target share to opposing tight ends on an opponent adjusted basis. If you just look at the raw numbers, they're top 3. But if you adjust for opponents, it's the highest target share. That's where teams have chosen to attack the Rams. And we've seen a lot of tight ends go off against the Rams. I also went over 3.5 catches, but that's juiced. And in some places that's up to 4.5 now. So I like the yards even better. TJ Hawkinson over 41.5 against the Rams.
I'm also noticing that TJ Hawkinson's first touchdown is in that plus 1,200 to plus 1,500 range. And I think that's important to call out because we got prime time tonight, but we also have this BetMGM promo. Bet on a player to find the end zone and win a share of $250,000 in bonus bets if they end up scoring the longest touchdown of the week. A touchdown is always 6 points, but the longest one could mean you get $250,000 in bonus bets. Wager on any player to score during a game. If your pick has the longest touchdown of the week, you'll win big time bonus bets on top of your wager. Here's how it works. Opt in to the longest touchdown jackpot promotion. Place a $10 plus anytime touchdown wager up to one eligible bet per game. If your player scores the longest touchdown of the week, you'll win a share of $250,000 in bonus bets. All right, we got a lot more picks to get to, and we're going to do that right after this message from our partners. All right, we're back on the early edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Japan says Rams plus 2.5. Sam Darnold isn't a rookie QB, but he is making his first playoff appearance. Very interesting take there. I got a couple questions before I give out my take, which is kind of on the other side of Japan's here. One question, Mackenzie, you're gonna be on the back end of these questions. I want to know, you as an Eagles fan, who you prefer, the Vikings at home or the Eagles. But the Vikings or the Rams. But before you answer that, Larry, how high would you play the TJ Hawkinson prop? Because there is a lot of steam on that. I think in some places it's 43, maybe 44, 45.5.
Yeah, 44.5 is about as high as I would go.
Okay. That answers Walter Rogers Jr. question. All right, Mackenzie, I got to know, who would you prefer? I'm not even necessarily asking for like what the model would think. What do you prefer?
Yeah, I think I prefer the Vikings. I like the idea of Sam Darnold having to come to Philadelphia and, maybe like Danny said in the chat, turning back into the pumpkin he is, maybe forcing some interceptions, some turnovers out of him, going into that hostile environment would be the best way to put that. We do also, for this game, for what it's worth, have a lot of value on Sam Darnold interception. We would make the line minus 220. You can find it on books around minus 138, minus 140. So not an official play necessarily, but something I was thinking about picking out for today.
Well, Mackenzie, I hope you're wrong about that because I'm about to give out my pick. And I also hope you're wrong about, well, it's not that you were making the call here, but I hope the Eagles get the Vikings. For a variety of reasons. I think the Vikings are probably the more well-rounded team, but I've also got the Vikings money line here. Now, listen, this money line you can get at I put it in the SportsLine pick. This is over at FanDuel. Most books have this between minus 140, minus 145. Because I was getting this particular price, I took the money line. But if you're not getting this price, and you want to lay the 2.5, I don't mind that. I do think it's possible this goes down to 2 before kickoff. If you want to wait, it's not going to tick up to 3. I can tell you that right now. So Vikings money line minus 136 is where I'm going. So I do think the Vikings are in a really nice bounce back spot coming off the Detroit game. I think the Rams offense has really been sputtering down the stretch. We know the Rams beat the Vikings. What was it? Week 7 or week 8? I think it was week 8, actually. Both those teams were playing on Thursday Night Football on 4 days rest, but the Vikings did have to travel. They didn't have TJ Hawkinson in that game. They didn't have Blake Cashman in that game on defense, which is a very important piece for the Vikings. So I do think this is a good spot for a Sam Darnold bounce back. I think this offense will click. I fear that this offense for the Rams just isn't going to do much against the Vikings defense. They haven't been that great down the stretch. Yes, Sam Darnold is kind of the key piece here. If he has a game like last week, Vikings are not going to win this game, but I think he's going to be okay. And I think the Vikings defense will step up. Give me the Vikings money line minus 136. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just an interesting, fun prop. I would normally put it on that primetime show, but obviously not on that one here. Jordan Addison can be had at plus 600, 6-1 to have the most receiving yards in the game. Obviously a lot of big time game numbers out there, or big time players out there. If you're in the camp that thinks the Rams are going to win this game, I think Addison is a really strong look here if they're in some obvious pass situations. It's down to 450 on a few other spots, but there are a few plus 600s out there, and I think that number should be closer to 3-1.
Mike, you're going to get a first quarter question. KC3 says first quarter under 10. Is it a flat 10? That would be.
If you get a flat 10, yes, I would. If you can have a flat 10 and keep the push, I'm guessing he means under 10 points at 9.5 because you'd score 10 to go over. But yeah, if you find a 10, kindly DM me where you're playing that.
Yeah,
and I will. But yes, lean under if you're getting the full 10 for sure. Very different than 9.5.
Yeah, if you like, please clarify if you're seeing a 10 KC3, because usually it would be 9.5, or you'd get that half. The push probably not in play in that first quarter bet. Larry, I know you're on Hawkinson. I got to ask you before we get to Mackenzie's picks. Do you have an opinion on this game? And you don't have to have one, but on a side.
Yeah, I like the Vikings. I'm looking at various ways to play it like you are with the money line. The Rams offense has just been very disappointing down the stretch, held under 20 points, I believe, in 3 straight games with all of their weapons back. So, yeah, Stafford had an amazing game in that first meeting, and he didn't have Nakua and Cup really at full strength in that game, if you remember. But it was a very bad spot for the Vikings. Short week, travel, etc. No Hawkinson. I think the Vikings are the better team.
Mackenzie, I love that you just like pepper plays into the chat. I mean, first of all, feel free to interrupt and just say them out loud, which you do. But just the fact that, like, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast and you're not watching us on YouTube, just know that when some of our cappers are on, we're answering questions in the chat, but we're also just kind of like throwing in random plays. I mean, I'm not like, as the host, I don't know that I'd be able to do that, but I just love, like, we got Japan and Dustin Wiles and KC3 and so many putting in picks here, but Mackenzie just chimes in with Puka over 2.5 rushing yards out of nowhere in the middle of Larry's take. So I absolutely love that. But you actually have 2 official plays, Kenz. What are they?
Yes, I do. As far as Puka, one thing about me is I will not make this simple. We're going to go wide receiver rushing yards. We're going to go running back receiving yards, which is what we're going to do with Kyren Williams here. I don't like his rushing yard total. I actually like the under on it, but I do think he will get involved in the receiving game here because we saw Jahmyr Gibbs do a very similar thing. He had 5 receptions for 31 yards. It's because of this Vikings pass rush and the blitz that comes at them just constantly. So I do think they'll be in a situation, a lot of, short dump off passes, and he averages 13.7 yards per reception. So really, we theoretically could get here with 1 reception. I think the line is low because he's around 500 for this on his, since 2023. But again, knowing that his yards per reception is 13.7, I just feel like that would justify at least a double digit line, maybe like an 11.5. So not something he's typically always involved in, but for a game script like this, I think he absolutely will be. Then we're going to go to the NBA. I saw no one was on the NBA today, so just wanted to give some of our association friends some love. I like Zach Edey to go over 1.5 blocks and steals. You can find that at plus money on BetMGM plus 115. Again, a plus money bet on something, under his average. He averages 1.7 blocks and steals. I think this is a buy low spot because the last outing against Houston, he only played like 18 minutes because he got into foul trouble. So obviously we're seeing an under there, and he's on an under stretch in general, 4 of his last 5 games going under this. But before that, 10-1 to the over. So he's been on a stretch. This is really about minutes to me. Hopefully he should get more than 20 minutes here with Sengun. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, he's 13-2 to this over when he plays 20 plus minutes.
All right. We got an NBA pick. We got a Monday Night Football pick. I guess this would be our last Monday Night Football pick of the season, right? This will be it. But Japan says Puka went off last game. Look for the Vikings to try to slow him down. What's so interesting about hearing Brian Flores talk about Puka is, like, it was a surprise to most people, but especially Brian Flores, that Puka was like fully active for that game. And I don't know that that's an explanation for him going off, but I did think it was the candor from Brian Flores saying, like, hey, we didn't expect him to play. We weren't ready for it. I think that's really interesting. And they definitely, to Japan's point, will be keying in on Puka Nacua. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say for that very reason, I do like Mackenzie's play of the rushing yards on Puka just because of that. I do think no matter how it plays out, they find creative ways to get him the football, whether it's a true handoff or literally a backwards pass. I think that Puka is certainly going to touch the football a ton here. And
I don't know if you can get the rush attempt line, and maybe it's a better price, but he averages 4.7 yards per carry. So again, obviously it's really just like you're asking for it's like an Xavier Worthy type of prop,
Yep.
Give me a rush attempt.
And Mike, do you have an opinion on this game? I mean, I know you don't have an official play on the side, but is this one you just stay too far away from because a couple too many unknowns?
Yeah, so I lean Minnesota pretty heavily here. I thought the line should have been 2.5. I was anxious to get it at 1 before the change of venue. And frankly, I think the change of venue with the line movement is a little inappropriate and makes it a little bit worse of a play because the Rams have essentially no home field advantage to speak of, especially for a Minnesota team. Considering the division they play in, they're very used to playing in tough home field advantage spots. So I thought that you lost a little bit of value going to the neutral with a 1.5 point line movement or in that situation. So lean there still, but there is still, in an NFL game like this, there's a big difference between 1 and 2.5 on a spread, unfortunately. So if I had to play it, though, it would be Minnesota or nothing.
Yeah, that's a pretty good explanation of why I'm paying the price. A price I don't want to pay, if I'm being honest, the minus 136 on the money line, because I was a little surprised by that move as well. And I do think it could potentially rock back down to 2. We'll see if that actually happens. I think the Puka call is really interesting. We're going to have a lot more calls on the primetime show, of course, for Monday Night Football, for Vikings Rams. So make sure you have your notifications on to SportsLine so you can, I mean, it'll be at, I believe, 7 o'clock, but always have your notifications on because we have a lot of shows that pop up on the SportsLine YouTube channel. Hero says, new to SportsLine, been watching the show every day since I joined. Keep it up. Well, that's very nice of you to say. And where you been, Hero? Thanks for joining us, though. Really appreciate you watching the live show and chiming in. Anytime, anybody that's new to this show, if you have questions or you have comments or you want to give a pick out, we try to get to everybody in the chat if we can, not just on this show, but on the primetime show as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it. Let's get to the recap screen before we get out of here. I'm on the Vikings money line at minus 136. Mike McClure, Australian Open. Emma Navarro, minus 130. Larry Hartstein, TJ Hawkinson, over 41.5 receiving yards. I believe he said he'd play that up to 44.5. Don't forget, though, if you're a SportsLine member, guess what? You got the 41.5. Mackenzie Brooks, Kyron Williams, over 9.5 receiving yards at minus 120. And Zach Edey, over 1.5 blocks and steals at plus 115. We also have the SportsLine play. Oilers, minus 1.5 at plus 150 from Bruce Marshall. That's tonight, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, what a show we just had. What a cast we just had on a Monday. We're going to have a great cast tomorrow as well. And we're going to have a great cast tonight on Early Edge Primetime. Have a great Monday. Let's all kind of gear up for this Rams-Vikings game. And let's get some 8-10-1 is not where we want to be. Let's get a better recap screen tomorrow morning. Everyone, have a great Monday, and we'll see you later tonight. This is the Early Edge. I'm the Counselor of Cash. We rest our case.